us on the mic, talking life and what's alike. Middle age, it's quite the ride, finding joy and chasing pride. Career dreams and daily grind, funny moments that we find. Letting go of yesterday, making paths along the way. Middle age.
Tim, how are you, sir? We're back
Good,
for
Trav.
another great episode. You good?
I'm good, man. How are you? You're coming out of a cold.
Yeah, sinus infection, fun. It was a little bit worse during our interview with Yaw, today's guest, so we're at least improving a little bit.
You sound better, but you look worse.
I'm actually that's just kind of what happens.
That happens.
For me, sorry.
Yeah, well, it's late at night, so that makes sense.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. The Tim and Trav podcast. This is Tim's favorite part of the episode. The Tim and Trav podcast is all about basic life and meeting cool people and basically putting a spotlight on regular people who do really cool things. And today's guest, as always, Tim, I gotta pat us both on the back here. We've been knocking it out of the park. We've had some really interesting guests.
Yeah.
And some really cool people on who are doing really cool things that are out of the ordinary and, for the betterment of others on various different levels.
I agree with you, man. These people all inspire me, and they bring me tremendous amounts of joy. Just listening to them and hearing their stories. So we are very lucky.
Totally, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So, with that, we also have awesome listeners. And do you have any comments?
I do. I have a quick one from a friend of mine in the neighborhood named George, who he had texted me. And then I unfortunately deleted the text.
Oh, you delete text.
However, I do. I got to keep the text thing clean. But I do want to say that I do want to give George a shout out for listening. He's one of the last people I would have ever expected to listen. However, he went all the way to the beginning and listened to every single episode.
Oh, wow.
And
way back. Okay.
He just said that he really, really enjoyed it. And he actually mentioned Kate's episode, Dr. Kate.
Yeah.
Her talking about her career as a vet and the amazing work that she had done and how much that story moved him. So I didn't know George was such an animal lover, but that's good to know. And, just want to give George a thanks for the kind accolades and comments.
Yeah, that's really cool.
How about you?
I got a couple different messages.
Cool.
And some new people that reached out, new by meaning folks who were new to the podcast, but also new commenters, I should say. They've probably been listening for a while, but new commenters.
Cool.
And everybody just was remarking on what a fun interview we had with Clark, and I couldn't agree more. It was a great episode. If you haven't listened to it, please go back. Clark Benson, he talks a lot about his passions for brewing beer for Masthead Brewery here in Cleveland. And just a really fun episode. So if you haven't listened to it, go back and do that. All right, man. If you have a comment, a question, a guest suggestion, even if it's you and you're suggesting yourself, hit us up, timandtravpodcast@gmail.com. It's timandtravpodcast@gmail.com. And we'll put it in the show notes below as well. So you don't have to run to a pen if you're driving or whatever. But, hit us up. We love getting comments. We read all of them. We may not read them all verbatim on the podcast, but we definitely receive and read and share all of them. So thank you.
I agree with you, Trav. Thank you. And thank you for always making sure that those, important logistical components are covered. You do a great job of that. I'm just sitting here thinking about, I'm in a far-off place in my mind, but you are always staying on top of it, Trav, so I'd be lost without you, man. So, Trav, let's get into Awesome Wife Moment. What do you have?
So, as you mentioned earlier, I have been down for the count with a sickness of, and it's been a bit, it's lingered, but of course, as most parents can probably identify with this or relate to this, it came from the kids. So, unfortunately, our daughter went down with it. She was real sick for a little while. Then it was my turn. Now it's my son's. And the thing about it, the only reason I bring it up for this is because she, even You know, there's that like old joke is like, oh, if a dad is sick, like with the most minor cold, it takes him out, and you know, like he's on the couch and he's crying and whatever.
Hey,
and
that is not a joke in this. That's not a joke in this household. I'll tell you that much.
You.
Yeah.
And you know, like I've been trying to pull my weight, I just can't. You know, and she's just there, and she's like, oh, I got a little scratch in my throat. Oh well, you know, and she just like powers through. Yeah. And she's always putting everybody else first. And that's not a new thing. That's not like a moment as an awesome wife moment, but it's definitely something that I wanted to point out, even if she doesn't ever hear this. It's one of those like, all right, I am kind of a big weenie, and she's just always the stronger one taking care of everybody. So
don't give up, man. You are not alone. You are not alone. I when I get sick, I go down pretty hard, and the reality is I'm probably not all that sick.
Meanwhile, Christy's like rebuilding the house.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I know. I'm with you. So mine just happened actually last night. She had a long day at work, came home probably around 8:30. And Nolan, our middle guy, was struggling with some math homework. He had a test today. So she went in, dove right in to try to assist him in his studies. And some of the stuff is really complicated, actually. Oh. And they teach it differently now than they did when we were kids as well. So there's a whole other learning curve or new element there. So interestingly enough, she couldn't figure all of it out with him in that moment. And it got to a point where it was just like getting late and he needed to go to bed. What does Christy do after he goes down to bed? She gets his math book and opens up a computer and some scrap pieces of paper and begins to work on these problems so that the next morning, which was this morning, she could wake up and sit with him and, be prepared to assist him to get ready for that. So that was impressive.
Wow. So she taught herself the whole new math method?
Yeah.
What grade?
Well, he's in 7th.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's not nothing. If you're a parent out there who's ever looked at new math homework, it's different. It is.
It's challenging. Yeah. I don't even look at it.
So not only is she smarter than you, she's also far more driven. Got it. Great.
I mean, he knows not even to ask me for help.
Do you actually, you know what? Speaking of that, do you have these things as a dad where your kid just totally bypassed you on purpose? They're just like, I'm not even going to bother.
Trev, it happens every day. Are you kidding me? And I don't blame them. They're doing the right thing.
Well, yeah, no, they've learned what's efficient. It's just one of those like, wait, I can do that.
Yeah. So I thought it was very cool, very inspiring, and impressive.
It's very impressive. I mean, it's not, and it's it's twofold. It's the dedication and the selflessness, but it's also the learning that is. I mean, I was an English major for a reason, but that's intense.
Yeah, they were up at 6:15 this morning, going through things. So pretty wild.
Good for her.
So we're lucky guys. Let's keep moving, Trav. We have an amazing sponsor that we need to talk about and showcase.
Yeah, so we will roll the clip here in just a second. If you're a coffee aficionado and you have not tried this, you are absolutely missing out. Even if you're not a coffee aficionado and you're just looking for something different or something new, or you want to, now this is kind of where I am. I was not a coffee drinker up until a couple years ago. So I didn't know anything about what good coffee tastes like. And then this came along and I was like, oh, I didn't know anything at all. This is like the best coffee I've ever had. It's not a joke. I've heard that from so many different people. So let's roll that ad real quick for Madagascar Coffee Company. Just off the southern coast of Africa is a tropical hotspot with some of the world's greatest biodiversity, Madagascar. Within this magnificently lush landscape, a coffee company was born. Meet Madagascar Coffee Company. With a vision to redefine your coffee experience, these guys are all about next level quality in your cup, better prices for farmers, and a sustainable supply chain that actually makes sense. If you love coffee or just need a better cup to get you through the day, check them out at MadagascarCoffeeCompany.com. They've committed to announcing their upcoming sales launch right here on the Tim and Trav podcast. Madagascar Coffee Company. Coffee that does good and tastes even better.
Cool, man. All right. Speaking of amazing work and amazing people, this is a great segue into our guest, Yaw, who is about to join us. What an incredible interview. This young man is so dynamic and so gifted and is so driven. I was just kind of in awe. I mean, even when it ended, I was in awe of what we experienced with him.
I couldn't agree more. And like my mind's still kind of trying to wrap my head around how smart he is. Let's roll it.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the time has come. We are here with the one and only Yaw Owusu-Boahen. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Pretty good.
That's cool, man.
Oh no. Okay, do you know what it was? It's the accent on Boahen is on bois, not the hen.
Okay,
I
messed that
it's
up.
actually Boahen. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Gotcha.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, it's awesome to have you here. We're just so grateful that you could, come on our podcast with us, share a little bit of your time. Certainly your expertise. We've done a little research on you, seen some of your videos. You're a pretty well-known dude in the New Haven area and probably even a little further beyond. But this is great, man. I mean, welcome aboard.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's new for me to hear people speak to me because in the long arc of my life, New Haven is a new chapter, but it's exciting to hear that because that's my goal. We just settled here. We're trying to build a life. It's nice to be introduced as a Connecticut person.
Well, let's start there then, man. If you don't mind, can you give us a little backstory on your history?
Sure. Yeah. So I was originally born in Ghana, but I grew up in the United States. My family moved at first to North Jersey, and then we moved to Central Jersey, which exists. And then after that, I in for undergrad. I went there honestly trying to be a doctor. I have Ghanaian parents who told me I could be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. And I went in as a doctor, took a chemistry class, was like, I will not be a doctor. And then it kind of started this long arc of trying to figure out what I was interested in. But what really sat with me was I was driven to be a doctor less because I love science and more because I love the idea of having an impact on people, right? Like you come into my office, you have a problem, I help you solve it. You go back to your life and things are better. So I was like, where else can I do that? And I was convinced by a number of consultants that I could do that in consulting. So I ended up leaving Princeton to go start my career as a consultant, as a way to kind of learn business. And they often sell it as like consultants are business doctors. Like I've heard many people say this. You come, you have a problem, they diagnose the problem, they give you the prognosis, right? They give you the treatment, and then you move on with your life. I very quickly realized there's a lot of difference between medicine and consulting, and that one makes you feel a little bit more passionate about what you're doing. And so when I kind of got my feet on the ground with my work, I started to realize that it was kind of time for me to just try something for myself. And so I was fortunate enough that a friend of mine was interning at a venture capital fund that was trying to in the United States. And so they had this incubator in Brooklyn where they basically said, hey, if you have an idea, if you're passionate about entrepreneurship, if you want to start something, and you're exceptional, we will believe in you. We'll write a check to start your company. So this was kind of the moment where I kind of left the path I understood and said, you know what, I'll leave Bain, this incubator thing, like best case scenario, I get a company, worst case scenario, I learned something. I ended up starting a hiring platform with a co-founder I met in that institution. And that really began kind of my impact entrepreneurship journey. That first company was called Lemons. And what it was designed was create a pathway for people who want to be marketers, but aren't traditionally credentialed. So like how to do ads on YouTube, have a degree because you can't afford one. Our platform was a way where you could show your skills because we wouldn't do interviews. We would literally post a challenge. We wouldn't get any of your information, your gender, age, race, where you're from. We would just watch how well you performed on our competitions that simulated the job. And then based off of how you ranked, we would then introduce you to a hiring manager who would sponsor that competition. And so this was our idea of like trying to change it's like to be qualified for something. And it was going pretty great. And then the pandemic happened. The world exploded. All of our clients left. We ran out of money, couldn't raise anything because nobody was type of thing. So I had to kind of restart myself and ended up joining a company to build an incubator, this time trying to help people start tech companies because it's 2021, 2022. Everyone's trying to do this, right? But if you are not someone who can raise a friends and family round, which is what's affectionately in the investing world called the first people who bet on your idea by giving you money that they don't need. You're of a certain demographic, that's really easy. Your uncle can write you a pay, your grandpa left you some inheritance. You can use that to build your tech. But if you come from other backgrounds, you don't have those people, right? And so you can't ever even get to the point where you can validate if what you're trying to do is useful. So this incubator found people at that stage and then helped them build their product for free, helped them with their pitches, and we made introductions to angel investors. And so I did that and helped a few folks raise a few $100,000, and then ended up going to business school. And that's what really introduced me to this Connecticut ecosystem. I came here, honestly, in my reflections, I think I wanted to be a journalist, but I always had this kind of impact lens at the back of my mind, and now I'm an impact investor. So it's kind of like those things. New Haven has a critical mass of impact professionals who are really thinking deeply about trying to solve systemic issues that I hadn't ever seen anywhere else. And so, my wife and I met here, got married here. We ended up leaving and going to New Jersey, but the pull of New Haven and Connecticut kind of brought us back. And so I've been here as the Wealth Accelerator executive director and the vice president of impact investing at ConnCORP, basically for the last, I want to say, year and change. And it's been an incredible journey. So I'm sure that's a lot more than you bargained for, but that's me on page.
Could you just repeat all of that one more time, please? Yeah, that was a lot, and we need to pick that apart a little bit if you don't mind. So I'm going to just kind of go all the way back to the beginning. So born in Ghana, right? How old were you when you came to New Jersey?
6.
6. Okay, so you had some childhood there, and then came to New Jersey.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then life since then has been largely between Connecticut and New Jersey.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, I got you. Okay, so how did your parents respond when you told them that you weren't going to be a physician?
The way you would expect. I think they received it as, my son doesn't know what he's doing. Like, he's lost. My son needs guidance. And my parents reacted in trademark different ways. My father is the more stern one, and my mother is the more accommodating one. So my mom was, yeah, what's going on? You said you wanted to be a doctor, 10, 11, like, help me understand. My dad was just like, do you want to not be sexy your whole life? No. Like that, it was getting that side of things, But what I will say that helped this a lot, and this will help you understand a lot about who I am. I knew this was going to be an issue. So I actually, like an argument, I actually had a PowerPoint that was like, don't worry, I know I'm not going to be a doctor, but there's 2 paths I can take. 1, I can take the MBA, and 2, I can take the law school route. And this is what I'm thinking of doing. I actually ended up getting the MBA, so it wasn't entirely made up. But I think that maybe softened the blow to help them understand I was thinking about this. But in the end, my dad was actually right. I did not know what was going on, and I was just kind of going with the wind, but it ended up working.
But you had a PowerPoint, so it was compelling.
I had a PowerPoint. Hey, y'all.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can we get into a little bit more? You said the first company was called Lemons?
Yes.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about that? Like, whose idea was that?
I think it was a joint idea. So my co-founder and I at the time were trying to really get a sense for like what is it that we were trying to do, right? Like what made what we were doing different. And we thought of the phrase that came up to coin cars. Like a lemon is a car that looks like it's functional, but really it's terrible, right? And then we were thinking the idea of like, you get a lemon, you can turn lemons into lemonade. Like you can turn this idea that you're not something valuable and make it into something that's marketable for people. And so we viewed the company as almost like a mechanism for turning lemons into lemonade. Like this person is valuable. The system that you created to determine what value is, which is their resume, which school they went to, which name chip companies that they've worked at, right? That system is saying that they're not valuable, but we see them for what they are. And so we're going to help you see them a bit differently. And so that's where the name came from.
And do you feel like those experiences in terms of getting that off the ground and being an entrepreneur and everything, do you feel like there's a lot of overlap with what you're currently doing? Or do you feel like that's a completely different venture that you just, launched out of it?
Yeah, I think it's instrumental. I don't think I'd be able to do anything I'm doing now without that experience for a number of reasons. One, entrepreneurship is so humbling. Like it really shows you who you are. Like it's like putting a giant mirror up against your face. Like this is who I am, right? This is what I'm good at. This is what I am abjectly terrible at. And great entrepreneurs accept that. Like I know what my strengths are and I know what they are not. When I'm building, I'm not trying to make myself someone I'm not. I'm trying to build a system that's use of my abilities and then fills in the gaps with other people for whom that's the best use of their abilities, right? And so I think that mindset shift was valuable. The piece was, it actually was empowering. It's weird to say something is humbling and empowering at the same time. But it was empowering because at the time I started this company, I was, I don't know, 24, right? And I would walk into a room and the average client that I'd be speaking to is like in their 40s. So I have to walk in and convince this person that they should spend money that they could spend on on a person they haven't met yet, but like you can co-sign me because I am going to tell you this person is good. Like that is such a challenging thing to put yourself. And if you can make a sale in that environment, like very few things you can't do. So I think that second piece is valuable. But to me, I think the most instrumental part of that, and this is kind of the through line across all the things that I've done, what I like to do is find someone who is underestimated. There's a lot of words for this, right? But someone for whom there is a lot of inherent value, a lot to offer. But the way that we've been taught to think about value makes us not think this person is valuable. How do you communicate that value in a way? That to me is a supremely difficult thing that I think I'm differentially better at because I've had so many reps of like walking up to a market, an agency that has done things the same way for 10 decades, right? And saying, listen, a chance, your hiring process isn't great. Here's this person. Let me show you how great they are. I know they don't look like what you think that a person like this is supposed to be, but like, let me show you why this is incredible. And the work that I'm doing now is like, I'm working with folks in Dixwell, New Hallville, folks who are very low income, like 20, 30% of area median income. We're talking about median incomes of like $25,000 a year. And we have perceptions about what that type of person is, what they go through, what their lifestyle is supposed to be. And a lot of my work, I mean, all mechanical, right? Trying to get them access to opportunity and those things. But what brings the opportunity, what brings the capital, what brings the partners is the ability to tell that narrative and say, no, this is a person and there's a lot of value to this person. And if we can help this person get from point A to point B, look at all the value that we provide, not just for them, but also for everybody around them. And being able to speak to that with confidence, like I didn't do that well at the first juncture. I think with my incubator, I got even better at it. I was like, hey, here are folks who couldn't raise a friends and family round. But like, look what we were missing out on because nobody wanted to give them a platform or an opportunity. Now I'm doing it, at a much bigger level in much higher need. But those opportunities, those skills, those just reps tell that story in a way that's authentic. I wouldn't replace it for anything.
That's so interesting. And correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things that I find really interesting about that particular approach is you're not necessarily trying to go in and change the entire framework of the people that you're talking about, right? Like you're going in and you're saying, this is why this person is actually a round peg for a round hole. You just don't understand that you're the round hole right now. Your framework right now is that, it's different. You're just looking at it differently rather than saying your framework is wrong. And here, let me tell you why. Am I understanding that correctly? Is that kind of the approach, is that this is why this person actually fits rather than this is why what you're trying to fit in doesn't work? Or am I backwards on that?
No, that's actually a really insightful point that you mentioned. And I actually think that the answer for me is different depending on each of the different experiences. The first it was a business, right? To stay alive, we had to like place and collect a commission off of placing talent. So within like a structure like that, you're not really going to get very far trying to change the way people think. And I actually learned this the hard way. First sales were like, you are wrong. Everything about how you've done your hiring process, it's terrible. Look how racist it is. I can't believe you're standing in front of me doing what you do. I have the solution for you. Like, didn't work. Didn't make any sales. Nobody wants to hear that. It wasn't until I started to be like, oh, these are real people making decisions that feel rational based off of their frame, right? And like, I'm not really going to. And actually, I leaned on my experiences in college doing active help inform the way I thought about this. When I was in college, I was part of a group of students who were trying to the Woodrow Wilson School name of the School of Public Policy, which is the school that I majored in. And there was this campus-wide conversation all the time about Black Lives Matter. I was in school at a time when people thought that was like a terrorist organization. And they were like, White Lives Matter, this, and that. That's where I came up, right? And what I very quickly realized was like, I can't in a conversation change the way somebody sees the world. It's not going to happen, right? It's 10 minutes of me 20 years of whatever they've been, experiencing. And so when I was in the situation trying to sell like this like placement service to these people, I just thought it would be much faster for me to just say, okay, your system is all right. Like the way that you think about hiring people, fine, right? But if you tweak this 3 knobs over here and you just think a little bit broader about how you're approaching this, you can actually get to a better outcome, because tweaking is something that they're used to, right? If I tell you your system it's okay, but let's make a few tweaks, it'll get better, that sounds reasonable. If I tell you that the core foundational way of how you built the system is wrong, you need to uproot it and start over, right? That's a much harder thing to do. So that's the business side. But more on kind of like the impact side of things, I do think that there's a strong argument to be made that the system is inherently flawed. I think the evidence is there. I'm absolutely not here to say I think that the system as running is acceptable. What I'm saying is I don't think that I'm moving that overnight. And the pragmatist that I am in this moment, I want to deliver something now, because the people I'm working with aren't interested in a paper that's going to do something maybe 10 years from now, right? Like they want to know how they will escape their circumstances in this moment. And so for me, I'm like, okay, there's actually a lot within the system that we're not doing, right? Like we have things like we've created tax incentives for banks, economic development projects in low-income neighborhoods, the way the system is designed. Would it be great if we didn't have the systems the way they are and folks already had everything to begin with? That would be fantastic. That's not the world we live in. The world we live in is that these subsidies exist. So then I look at that and I say, okay, the system is flawed, but here is what I can tweak. What if I take this and I reallocate it from where it's going to things I think will be beneficial for those communities, knob tweak, and I make a real difference in those communities. Is the system still flawed? Yes, but have 10, 20, 100 people escape their circumstances. And I see that as value. So it's sure. Yes and no, you know?
And do you feel like those knob tweaks in the latter part of that, do you feel like that is actually going to eventually become the change that you want to see in the overall? Or is it just kind of like, I'm trying to work the system the way that I can to affect change directly, and it's not necessarily a overarching thing? Or do you feel like if you make these changes now, eventually we'll be able to kind of break open the rest of the egg and change the things that it needs to, the way it needs to change? Do you feel like it's an incremental thing, or is it like just this is what I can do right now, and that's what I'm going for?
Yeah, I think it's both, honestly. Something that I reflect on is when you sit in the political discourse in this country, folks are very myopic. Like folks think really? Very, very narrowly. No, I like to be, yeah, really, I know. But I mean it like timeline wise, right? Like yeah. We think about things with like a through window of memory and don't zoom out and think about what it actually took to get here. Yeah. Right? Tree was founded by wealthy landowning white men who did taxes to their colonial government because they didn't feel that colonial government gave them enough representation. All of the people who did this were wealthy landowning white men, right? And the tax was 3%. And that's where we started country. It didn't become what it is now, where I'm free as a Black person to have this conversation with both of you. Like I wouldn't be able to do this 400 years ago. This didn't happen. This happened because folks looked at where we were and thought this is not right. And I'm willing to sacrifice a whole bunch of things, ranging from my job to my life, to pull things in a more fair direction. But at the time where they stood, they were thinking very incrementally. So like, let's go from Black people being assets, slaves, to Black people being people who can own assets, right? From where we stand, that's a big deal, but we still have so much to go, right? Sure. That was actually a very incremental step. You could have said at the time, not only do I want them to be free, I want them all to have land and political participation, and we need to rechange the whole way that we do our political system. And those things happened. It took decades and decades and decades of pulling things along, right? Yeah. And you can't get to here without all of those incremental gems. So when I sit and I say something like, yes, the system is flawed, we do need to change it if we want to get to the promised land, but I'm actually just interested in trying to move these tax credits into this community. That is my version of the small inflection point. Sure. I'm trying to get it from the place where, as a community in this country, Black people, despite representing 13% of the population, have less than 5% of its wealth and therefore less than 5% of its power and independence, right? If I can move those numbers up, it's not going to rechange the system, but it will very slowly start to have downstream effects that move us to a place where the land isn't up high in the sky, right? You've now made so much incremental progress that people on something like, let's change the whole way that this system works, doesn't feel crazy. It actually feels like the next step.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of what folks are excited about feels crazy to people, but the thing is actually really exciting to all parties involved. I've actually been shocked by how willing and philanthropists and all sorts of folks are to support the work that I'm doing. So this is where folks are at. I'm going to meet them here and I'll pull them along as far as they're willing to come.
That's awesome. And is there a goal kind of within your organization to take it from, I hesitate to use like the local, term, but like to make it broader, like more like outside of the current communities that you serve? Or is it just like, or is it one of those things where you'll maybe duplicate it in another space, in another community and so forth? Okay, I hate this question, but like, what's the 5-year and 10-year plan?
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, that's a great question. I have separate answers for kind of both of the main things that I work on. I'll start with First Haven. So First Haven is a $200 million development project happening in the Dixwell community in New Haven, Connecticut. For folks who are not familiar, Dixwell is one of the poorest in the entire state of Connecticut. Connecticut has the third largest wealth gap in the country. So just down the street from this neighborhood, I think it's actually a 5-minute walk, is one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Connecticut. And this disparity didn't happen by accident. Dixwell has been denied preferential loans for home ownership. Not much industry has been located in this community. At any opportunity, this community has been disinvested in. And so the Dixwell Plaza, which is where First Haven is constructed, originally was a strip mall, but it was known as a place that folks would go to shoot up, to do drugs, to meet up for various activities. So it was kind of a blight in the neighborhood. And this is shocking because about 100 years ago, there was a Black Wall Street on Dixwell in New Haven. So this is actually a historically well-off Black community that was disinvested in, and now this is the state that it had come to when this project began. So ConnCORP bought up all the properties in the strip mall, demolished the entire thing, and then started anew and are building. This year, we're going to open a headquarters for ConCat, which is a workforce development organization helping train folks from that for real jobs, often at Yale Health and other companies in the area. Be a childcare facility for folks who don't have access to that. And then we're building a large tower of new residential housing, 20% of which and then also putting a fresh grocer store there because it's also a food desert. So that's kind of the totality of what that project is trying to accomplish. This, I believe, is a model that can be scaled like one way, kind of doing it for other communities. So this is New Haven. As I've described in New Haven are also present in Bridgeport. They're present in Hartford. They're present in New London. And I believe there's definitely room, especially with this huge push for housing because of the way that become unaffordable, that this can be replicated across the state. And I'm hoping folks nationwide see this because one, ConnCORP is a Black-led and owned organization. In the redevelopment, right, we've seen large corporate entities come into a community and gentrify it. That's not what's happening, right? And so we're showing what it look like to work with community. Like we have community hearings constantly about what folks want to see. Even everything from the colors to the name was influenced by the community. And so hoping to scale that and show people that you can make things modern without taking things away from people.
Sure.
So that one is kind of like more of a local, let's repeat that elsewhere. Accelerator, on the other hand, which is an impact incubator. It's designed to make systemic changes that help low-income people, right? So how can we take folks, again, as I mentioned before, median incomes, we're talking 20, 30, 40,000 a year. For them, what does it look like to build wealth? If you make 20, 30, 40 million a year, then there's a whole host of options for you to maintain and grow your wealth. We want folks on the bottom of the spectrum to have access to the same thing. And so we have a few we kind of work under. The first is financial foundations. It's this idea that you need to have a sheet in order to invest and grow your wealth. So that looks like getting an emergency fund, getting access to bank accounts, right? Like a checking account, a savings account, opening a Roth IRA, right? And then fixing your credit so you can get access to good quality interest loans. And then in the middle, we have early wealth building. So this is taking folks with those healthy balance sheets and then giving them seed capital. This is our Cash Catalyst pilot that we're doing, fits under this pillar, where we found folks from Dixwell and gave them a grant in the form of a baby bond. And then they have that $20,000 that they can use to build their wealth, and seeing what that looks like. And then the final stage is retirement planning, helping, again, these low-income folks who are nearing the end of life to plan for what that post-career situation is going to look like. A lot of that is going to end up focusing on making sure folks don't get wealth destruction at the end of life, which is actually really common. And again, I could kind of talk forever about this, but I'm laying this foundation to say that the Wealth Accelerator is designed to scale in a way that First Haven is not. Where our first year, we were very New Haven focused. This year, we're doing pilots across the state, so it'll be very statewide. But next year, we're going to start expanding regionally and hopefully eventually to nationwide, because we firmly believe that the problems that we're seeing in New Haven, in Bridgeport, New London, are the same problems that other communities across the country are facing. And we are in a unique place where Connecticut is leading in terms of trying to close the ratio. Connecticut is the first state to pass a baby bonds law and open trust accounts with $3,200 in each of them for, at this point, last 33,000 babies.
Wow.
Turn 18 will have access to $20,000 that they can use to go to school or start a business or invest in their retirement. The only other states that are doing this passed a law, but it took them, I think they passed it in 2021, and the accounts are now being seeded. And Washington, D.C. has a small program as well. But by virtue of where we're located and that folks are facing, we feel like we can too lead the nation in terms of what this looks like to close the racial wealth gap.
That's incredible. Well, I'd say that your parents have to be proud by this point.
I have heard him say it, yes. And he said it. So I can confirm. Yeah, Thomas is very proud.
Thomas should be.
Yes.
Trav, I knew coming in here, I had this fear coming in here because I was like, you know what? This guy is so smart, I'm not going to be able to keep up with him. and Yaw, you're making me, and it's all come true. That's the problem right now.
Yeah.
So I'm doing the best I can. Yaw, so two different companies we're talking about right now, right? I mean, the company that was developing First Haven and then Wealth Accelerator. Where do you sit between those two? Are those partner companies, or can you help explain that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So the Wealth Accelerator is actually a fiscally sponsored project. So it's not yet its own organization. It was founded originally in conversations between Eric Clemens, who is the CEO and founder of ConnCORP, so the First Haven company. He kind of came up with this idea convened a bunch of local stakeholders to put this idea together. And they spent a lot of time ideating on what this could look like. I was brought on as the inaugural director to kind of take all the research and work that they had put together over the course of the years and turn it into something. And I kind of got to figure out what that something was going to look like. So I've been building that into a thing. And it's exciting now where people will refer it as something like a company, because when I took this job, there was nothing on the internet. So it's exciting to be here at this moment. But ConnCORP itself has its own back history. ConCat was the original organization founded, I want to say like 15 or 16 years ago. It's been some time. And it was founded by Eric Clemens to bring Bill Strickland's model of workforce engagement to Connecticut. So Bill Strickland, out of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania, which also similarly was experiencing the blight that you would see in something like a New Haven before First Haven started. And his model was to integrate arts and music and culture with workforce development and training programs for low-income Black communities to help kind of bring them out of their circumstances. So Eric brought that to New Haven, started ConnCat, and to date, I think they've trained and placed over 1,000 people into companies in the local New Haven area. Wow. So I want to say maybe 8 or 9 years, Eric will correct me on the number, but into that, training people for these jobs, like training people as like phlebotomists, construction workers. There was a lot of working with formerly incarcerated folks who are barred from many employment opportunities and getting them into gigs as construction workers and those types of things. So workers as well. That was kind of step one. But what they started to realize is until you get folks from just working to also asset ownership, right? Like I have a house, I have a piece of equity in this business, or I have a company of my own. Right? So you're never quite going to get over that hump. So ConnCORP was started with that idea in mind. It was meant to kind of buy up housing in the neighborhood and provide affordable housing to train people on how to start their businesses, train people on how to become developers. And so to date, we now have 22 affordable in 6 buildings across New Haven. In addition to the First Haven development that we're working on, we have I'm spacing on this. Our construction school is actually training folks from the area to work on the first. So there's a path to get from living in the neighborhood to working on the building. And then most of different things like that happen on the ConnCORP side. So I actually came into this ecosystem as the inaugural director of the Wealth Accelerator, and I wasn't involved with ConnCORP. And the folks at ConnCORP were like, come help us do this stuff. And I said, to that. So that I ended up joining as vice president of impact investing at ConnCORP. And now I spend my time working on First Haven and a whole host of other things, but then also making the Wealth Accelerator a thing and just, keeping the balls in the air.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know, Trav. I'm shocked they went after him. I mean, he's not really too articulate, not too bright. I don't know what they were thinking. They made an awesome choice, and it's amazing what you guys are doing. Can you remind us of the capital that is being invested in First Haven? How much money and where is that coming from?
Sure. Yeah. So the total build of the entire project will be about $200 million. The first phase, I believe, is a little bit over $50 million. And that's the phase with the corporate headquarters for CONCAT, which is the workforce development program. It'll also have a childcare facility. There's a couple other spaces that are being discussed with tenants. There are pieces we'd like to go in there, but I would say that aren't necessarily finalized yet. And then again, the second building, that's the housing unit. So it'll be 184 units of housing, 20% of which will be affordable, and then the grocery store as well. In the first building, a lot of that, I want to say pretty much all of that funding came foundations who believed in us and did things like called PRI, like program-related investments, patient catalytic capital to get it off the ground. Grassi Memorial Fund, who was actually also on the steering committee of the Wealth Accelerator, they wrote the first $10 million check to get First Haven off of the ground. After them came a number of other philanthropists as well who contributed to the project. And we also have the city of New Haven and the state of Connecticut who have also contributed to the project as well. And hopefully will continue to do so until the whole thing is built. So there are other pieces of capital in discussion, like some senior debt that's coming from local banks who work with ConnCORP and are also interested in seeing this get over the line. And so the details of the may shift a bit as we capitalize the second phase. But like I said, I've been astonished, right? Like if you had pitched this type of idea to anybody 10 years ago, they would look at you like you're crazy. But I've been astonished at like the energy and the folks who are invested in care about what's happening here and are willing to do something like write a loan where, the repayment structure is extremely generous so that we can finish everything and it's not destructive to the completion of the project. So.
Right.
I think what's so wonderful too that you had mentioned earlier is the community buy-in that you guys are going after as part of this process. So whose idea was that? And, have you run into any challenges as part of that process? Say, for instance, someone coming out and saying, hey, I don't really want this here. I mean, how have you dealt with some of that stuff?
Yeah, no, that's such a great question. And honestly, we all have Eric to thank for that. So I mentioned Eric Clemens, founder and CEO of ConnCORP. He's the whole reason any of this is happening. And he's also the reason he is bought in. Before First Haven even happened, Eric showed up to that and had conversations with that community about wanting to build CONCAT into a work organization. The specific programs, the column, all of those things came from community input years ago. Right. And so they saw Eric come into say, this is what I would like to do for you. How do you want to be involved? Then go back to institutions like Yale and Alexion and large corporations and say, we have folks they're doing. Are you willing to take them? Yes. And serve as a conduit for, at this point, 1,000 of those people to escape their circumstances. Right. So at that point, you built a lot of good. When Eric comes and says, hey, I want to redevelop the Dixwell Plaza that you've all seen as a blighted thing in the neighborhood for generations, like we would like to do this. For them, it wasn't like an immediate, we're not interested. It was more, okay, let's talk. right? So to me, that's the first step, is showing up, having delivered and demonstrated that you are in fact someone who's there for them and not another person here to extract from that community. From there, I think it's a conversation about how well you integrate them into the design. So there were just a number of community conversations, almost like town hall style, where we would show designs, folks would give input, and I mean input, down to the granularities of how the building is facing people. We actually had a discussion in a meeting last year about one confirmation of the housing building, and we said no to it because we had its back to the community, like to that point where we stopped that design and pursued a whole. And so I say that to say that we still have these community conversations. I think there was one just last month. And we got really great feedback on the name First Haven, which came from the idea that New Haven was actually settled by former slave families from the South who came north, and their first haven, like the first safe place, was New Haven for them. And so we named it First Haven to be that for those people. Like even things like that really resonated with the group. And so, you know, again, I'd love to say, here's the magic formula for getting the community to not be mad at you. But really, I like genuinely caring about them to the point where you devote so much time, much energy, you make so many changes because of their input that they start to see, like, you're not just change and caring about us. Like, you are making decisions that make your life harder for us. And I think there will always be folks, like there are some detractors. I think a few guys who really like to hang out by one of the corners. Now that corner is gone, they're not really pleased about that, right? We're going to get those things like, you know, I think we might have to like change some of the bus stop architecture because of loading restrictions. Folks aren't going to something like that. But at core, I think everyone understands, like, here's a trying to do what redevelopment is supposed to look like. And because of that, we don't face, nobody's like defacing anything that we're working on, right? And that you do see in other redevelopment projects.
Sure, for sure. Well, change in general is not necessarily always welcomed, regardless of how well intentioned. But yeah, that's. I mean, that approach, that building, the bridge building approach, has obviously been very effective for you for good reason. That's really cool. I'm curious, when you're, just to kind of paint the picture for me, because I'm not really familiar with Connecticut in general, much less these individual communities. So when you say you had these like town halls, are we talking like 10 interested people showed up and like 5 of them were yelling at you, or is this like a 50-person thing, or like what's that look like?
Yeah, so it varied depending on the one. So I want to say there have been ones with dozens of people who show up and there's like the microphone type thing and everything, what they have to say. I would say more recently they've been something more like 10 or 15 folks who show up and then have their opinions. But I think it's varied. I will say that it depends on why the conversation is being convened. So the most recent one I mentioned was about 10 or 15 people. That's in part because it wasn't like a big announcement. It was more like a check-in. Maybe a little smaller. I suspect when the first building opens in probably June of this year, there will be likely another one. I think that will be more attended because it will be like, this is opening. This is what this means for you. And folks will probably come in and share their opinions. So it really just varies.
In terms of the 20% of the building, the residential part of it being affordable housing, does that have a bearing on the remaining 80%? Are they supposed to be like high end to try and get the other communities that are the more wealthy side? Are they supposed to like, are you looking for people to live in this area that are of that wealth standard, or is this more like it's more of a middle ground with the other 80%, or how does that, or do you not know yet? Is it too soon to tell?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So we are making active efforts in particular to help folks who already live there who are interested in moving to get into the affordable units. Our affordable units will look and feel exactly the same as all of our other units. And so it's need to get extremely high quality housing for these people. And so that's something that we're doing. The market rate housing will be at the standard of any new build in New Haven, which is pretty high quality. We're building good lobby amenities, or we're using a really high quality architect actually. And a lot of the thinking behind was communities like this are often told, here's what you get. This is what you're allowed to have. Right. So we wanted to come and say, this is what you deserve. Like, here is the true totality of vibrancy and investment that you have deserved for all these years. So the building itself, as I mentioned, will be pretty high quality for everyone who lives in it. Thinking about housing and finance, I think I've learned a lot about how these things work. Basically, on a project like this, the market rate units subsidize the affordable units, but not in a direct way. It's more that usually when someone is building a building, they think about how many dollars do I get per door? So for each door in the building, how much money am I making? And there's a bottom threshold under which it's not worth building the building. And so if you want to build 100% affordable housing, which is great, the downside is your profit is low. And so you need people who are either willing to lose all of their investment and make it which happens sometimes, but usually it just means the project doesn't get off the ground. And so there's kind of like a math formula where you just add a certain amount of affordable housing until it's like, this is the most we can bear and still make the math work so that we can have this thing. And that's kind of how we got to this number. But as I mentioned, all the units are, and there's no kind of sections or anything to it. We're just trying to make it as inclusive as we can while still making it high quality for everybody else.
Right, for sure. It's such an interesting part of the whole buy-in of the entire project, right? It's like, you know, obviously, like you're saying, you don't want to go into the base level and just speak to them saying, this is what you deserve. But I just find it really fascinating in terms of you're doing something so revolutionary and interesting in the sense that it's not just, hey, we're putting up a building and by the way, there's going to be a grocery store. You're actually building a community within an existing community to help bolster it, right? So I was just kind of curious how that whole strategy pans out without obviously understanding anything about it. So
it's real. No, pointing that out. No, because even the design of how this thing exists is because of they said they didn't have access to fresh food. They didn't have access to affordable childcare. They didn't have access to like close medical facilities that are high quality. And so now we're in conversations about potentially putting an urgent care in there. It's very much we take what we get, make happen. And I think doing this little dance enough times, folks on both sides see what you're doing. Right?
Sure.
Yeah, but you're doing such active listening through the process. I mean, it's really so admirable and amazing what you and your team are doing. I've spent about 12 years working for an affordable supportive housing provider in New York City. So I certainly know, the challenges that go into that. I was more on the operation side once those buildings were developed. I never did anything that you were doing, but those people worked their tails off trying to make sure that the financing was in place and that the services were in place. And it's just really remarkable. So you at the beginning of this conversation, you kind of shared that you were looking at this path of, physician versus something else. And you knew that you wanted to make an impact, right? I mean, that was, you sort of alluded to this, that was a goal of yours. Do you feel that you are satisfying that desire in your spirit? We're going a little internal here.
Yeah, no, actually. And because, and my wife will make fun of me for this. What happens when I set a goal for myself and I work really hard to achieve it? The first thing I say is I must not have been dreaming big enough, because for me to be standing here, there's definitely more to go. So then I turn and I look and I'm like, well, what else can I do? That's how I got here. Like, I didn't think I was going to get into Princeton. I didn't think I'd get into Yale. Like, I didn't think that I would get these jobs or opportunities. So each time I'm like, oh, well, maybe there's more. And then there's always more. And what I grew up with, my dad is, my whole family, very religious, Christian Pentecostal Ghanaian. And so I grew up in that culture, and, it was inundated within me many things, but one of them was, to whom much is given, much is expected, right? And folks, I think about that some ways, like, oh, you get really rich, you need to give back to your community. I think, sure, that's fair. I actually think about that in terms of ability and impact. I am clearly somebody who has the ability to make these things happen. And so I view it as my job. It's like I have no choice almost. Like, I have to deliver this impact. And this is where kind of like the data-driven part of me comes in. If I thought from where I sat 5 years ago that was the ceiling, and in fact this is possible, I'm likely in the same position. There's somewhere I'll be 5 years from now where I was like, can you believe that's all I thought that I could do? Mm-hmm. So in this moment, yes, I'm working on this $200 million project. We've given over $500,000 to 55 folks in the Dixwell community so they can help buy homes. I'm actually helping folks homes, start businesses. I'm doing all of those things. And I think it's incredible. And I don't want to minimize how great this is. But I also know that if I can do this at the age that I think I'm smart, but I don't actually know a lot of how to do things before I do them. I have to believe that the future that there's more. So for me, I think, like, how do I add zeros? Like, I gave 500,000 to this community. How can I make that 5 million? How 50 million? How can I make that 500 million? How can I do it across the country? How can I do it around the world? And if I fail, I fail. Like, wherever the ceiling happens to, that's fine with me. But I would be remiss if I didn't keep fighting until I find out where that limit is. So
that's a great methodology. I love that mindset.
Yeah, agreed, man. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
And you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
you shouldn't stop.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Like, why? Worst case scenario, I try, and then I'm really like, that's great. I tried.
Right.
Well, what would you consider to have been in your professional life? What would you have? What would you consider to be your biggest failure besides coming on this podcast?
Hasn't aired yet.
This is rock bottom, right? Oh man, I felt that my biggest failure was when my company Lemons went under. It turned out to not be, but it felt that way at the time. And to kind of give you the context, right? Like, the year I started that company, I raised a pre-seed round from venture capital investors. In that year, I was one of less than 500 people who look like me that did that at all, to raise any money from venture capital. So I had come to this with no entrepreneurial experience, just like as somebody who was working at this consulting firm, and I was chosen out of like 100 people to get this money to go build this company. So I'm like, all right, this is my one big shot, right? Like, I have my ticket. These investors have backed me. I can get other investors to back me. And like, I'm going to be Mark Zuckerberg. Like, I really was like, I'll be Mark Zuckerberg, but like, the work I do will actually help people. And then, so to get to the point where the company was basically going under, like, all our clients canceled their contracts. So you're sitting here looking like, in the tech field, we have this term run rate, which is like, how many more months do you have money until you all go broke and the business shuts down? And you just watch it go from 5 months to 4 months to 2 months to 1 month to 1 week. And you just feel like such a failure for that happening, even though it was largely driven by the pandemic. I just squandered my one opportunity. In the end, I learned a lot of skills. It built a lot of confidence. Like, it helped me get connections. Like, there are folks from that program who I still talk to who have helped me do other things. But that really felt like my biggest failure. And I think it's because of how I framed success. I was like, success has to look like me being like all these other tech founders. They raise their pre-seed, then they raise their seed, then they raise their series A, then they sell some equity, they raise up B. And eventually you get acquired, you get all the money, you pay back your investors, you pay your employees, you keep your however many millions you, like, that's what I thought my success path had to look like. But it's not linear. And I was always going to end up in this kind of investor impact space, the in-between of like corporate, but like philanthropy. This kind of niche I'm carving out was always the destination. So it wasn't a failure, right? It was a step along the way. I don't really think of it in the same way that I think other folks think about failure anymore. To me, the only failure is if you don't try. So if I try something and I mess up, that's part of it. You can't get to success without messing it up a few times. But if I ever see a door in front of me and I think to myself, well, here's the upside, but here's the downside, I'm not going to try it. To me, that's a big failure, because what if the other side of that was real impact, right?
But yeah, why are you doing what also motivates you to do what you do? You did talk about, you referenced the word impact in the beginning. You want to make an impact. Where do you think that comes from?
It definitely comes from that upbringing. It definitely comes from this that I have to give back. It also comes from like the incredible people in my life, much less privileged positions than me, and provided more help to me than I ever could offer in my position. I remember traveling to London to visit one of my family members. And when I showed up, he picked me up from the airport, took me to his like 1-bedroom flat in like downtown Brixton. Brixton is kind of like cool and hipster now. It was not that at the time. So I showed up and I'm staying in like, his apartment in the flats. And he's so happy to see me. And he's like, here you go, here's food, here, you go have a great time, right? And I go back, and I come back and I'm talking to him, and like, there was always more food. There was always more money, right? And I had such a great time, and I come back, and then I remember later in life learning how much money my uncle had at that time. And the fact that he still thought, and he had clawed his way out of Ghana to London to make the money he could, to put it together, to do all of these things, and still saw me and thought, I really want him to feel special. He is important. He is valuable. I'm going to give back to him. Because if I were him, I would want my uncle to do the same thing. I could tell 10 of these stories off the top of my head. And what it showed me is that that's what humanity is supposed to be. Like, that is, in my view, what the point is. The point is, like, some of us go forward and we go through all the suffering and the hardships and the struggle to get something. And the point of that is to turn around and hand it to the next person and say, this is what I've done, so that you can be a little bit better off than me. So you can go do the same thing, and the cycle continues. And the goal is that we're all getting better. So because of that's how I think about it, there's a micro level that I think about it in terms of my family, right? Like, I want to take what my parents have given me, make it into something and give it back to our children in the future. Think about that in a global sense of, I'm a Ghanaian and I live in New Haven, and on the other side of town are a whole host of folks who are descendants of slaves who may have even come from my village in Ghana, right? And here they are in vastly different circumstances than me because of the arbitrary nature of history. And I'm here kind of doing the things. I would be remiss if I left them behind. No, I can help. And even more than that, helping for me is much less of a sacrifice than it's been for the people who helped before me, right? To a lunch counter to sit there and be brutalized by animals and hoses for the folks who chose activism at that time, right, was a much bigger sacrifice than me choosing to make a PowerPoint deck so that some folks can get money to start, like, buy a house. And so, I think about this as the world gets crazier, our country gets crazier, the politics get more insane. Like, why are you doing this? What is the point? And to me, this is how I reflect my humanity. This is how I reflect who I am. This is a calling for better words. And I think if it weren't for people like me, we wouldn't have society as we know it. As bad as things look, it could be much worse. And so I also feel a certain level of responsibility. But I'll kind of end it by saying that there is nothing that beats working really hard to materially change someone's circumstances. Like that, and nothing comes close. And so I said it last because it's actually the last thing motivating me, but I'm saying it to hopefully inspire folks out there that, yes, it's a selfless thing to do, but it's actually a radically selfish thing to do as well. Because no video game that you play or dinner that you have or vacation that you have is going to touch the level of importance and the level of just human and wholeness that you feel, taking your talents and opportunities and making it opportunity for somebody else.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Tim, unless you have other things, I think that's the best way to end it. I don't mean to sound cheesy, Yaw, but that was incredibly moving. Thank you for that. And I can only imagine the people who are on the receiving end of your passion are how they feel and how they've benefited personally and just on so many levels. If people want to learn more about First Haven or your other endeavors, how do they find you? How can they help? Can you give us the sales spiel a little bit of like, yeah, we're on channels and that kind of thing?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll start with First. So if you want to learn more about First Haven, I would go to ConnCORP. That's ConnCorp.org. And the information is on that website. Okay. If you want to learn more about the Wealth Accelerator, you can go to that website. It's Wealth Accelerator, CT.org. And there we also have a website where you can learn lots of information. Both ConnCORP and the Wealth Accelerator are on LinkedIn and Instagram. So you can find us there as well. I think for the Wealth Accelerator, for most people, I think the content you'll want to see is on. But on our LinkedIn, we also post lots of great academic content helping you understand and why we do what we do. So I would check that out as well. You can also follow me. I'm on LinkedIn, and I post a lot too. So always happy to have more folks looking to learn about the things I find interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll link all that for sure in our show notes and everything. So thank you for that. I just wanted to get the kind of audio version, if you will, of that so that they know to look.
Sure,
down.
yeah.
That's great. There's so much there to look through. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I would strongly encourage people to connect with Yaw on LinkedIn because you post some amazing stuff, and it's just an awesome opportunity to continue to follow your progress there. And
yeah, for sure.
There's a lot more in your future, man. Listen, I want to go work for Yaw.
Seriously,
that's great, excellent.
I mean, you let me know. I don't know if my wife will let me. Well, she may like it if I move to Connecticut.
Oh
and
yeah,
get away from her. So, yeah, no, you're really such an inspiring guy, and just so grateful to have this conversation. As Trav mentioned, I mean, it's just your final comments there in particular were just so awesome and so on point. So I'm grateful that other listeners, will get to hear that.
Yeah, for sure. The more we can spread it, the better.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you both for having me on. I was telling Tim when we were kind of in conversations about doing this, I haven't actually gotten a ton of reps of just speaking about this because I've just been heads down, and as you can imagine, all the work that's involved in making these things happen.
Yeah,
so thank you for the opportunity just to kind of talk in a low pressure environment about this and why it's important. And I just appreciate you guys listening.
Well, you could have fooled us. This felt like your 10th podcast, not your first. So well done. Well done. All right. Yaw, thank you so much. Like we said, if there's anything, folks, that you want to learn more about Wealth Accelerator, First Haven, Yaw in particular, personally, we'll list all that below. But thank you so much for your time and for sharing your passions and your endeavors. The world is a better place because you're in it. So thank you.
Oh, thanks, Yaw.
So Yaw, thank you for that. I mean, I can't say enough good things about it. I came downstairs after talking to him, and my head was just swimming with like the bounty of things that he's doing and how many people he's helping, and the revolutionary way in which he's doing it, and so holistically. And I just, man, I don't work in those spaces at all, but I just found it so incredibly inspiring that he, obviously this is a guy who could do just about anything he wants, and this is what he chose, which is just incredible.
I agree with you, man. I mean, he shared so much insight on that conversation. I thought it was so interesting to learn about some of his early, his career, the paths that he was on, and some of those startups that he was engaged in, what that must have looked like and felt like. What an interesting time for him, but what an informative time, as well. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, I was so impressed just with his commitment and his recognition sort of where we stand in time. Mm-hmm. And what he can and cannot do, and how he is working to kind of bend the arc of towards equality and towards justice. And, he's doing it the right way. I just think he's such an impressive guy, and I'm really looking forward to following him because he is just going to continue to do remarkable things. And we were so lucky to have that opportunity to speak with him.
I completely agree. We've said this a couple times this season. I do feel like he might be a return guest in the future, especially when they're a bit more down the road on these various projects. I'd be really curious to check in with him. It's also one of those, there's that kind of cliche but true line of like, be the change you want to see in the world. And it's like, man, that guy could have that tattooed on his chest. That guy, he does that.
He's living it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well,
thank you very much, man.
Yes, definitely. All right, mister. I think we're done.
Look at that. In and out. Tim, thank you as always.
Yeah, Trav. Good to see you, man. Stay well.
You too, buddy.
Tim and Travis on the mic, talking life and what's alike. Middle age, it's quite the ride. Finding joy and chasing pride. Career dreams and daily grind. Funny moments that we find. Letting go of yesterday, making paths along the way. Middle-aged mayhem, breaking free, finding out who we can be, laughing, learning all the time. Tim and Travis in their prime. Every step a brand new plan. Older, wiser, still we stand. Navigating through the years, sharing stories, laughs, and cheers. Middle-aged mayhem breaking free, finding out who we can be. Laughing, learning all the time. Tim and Travis in their prime. Every step a brand new plan. Older, wiser, still we stand. Navigating through the years, sharing stories, laughs, and cheers. Middle age and join the fun. Middle age has just begun. Tim and Travis lead the way. Every episode will slay.
All right, cool. Trav, you good?
Yeah, I'm good. We make fart jokes. I don't know what you're talking about.
Sorry, Trav.
It's a great answer. Tim, are you continuing your job interview of Yaw, or you want to know what's his biggest strengths? What's going on?
My biggest weakness is I just work too hard.
Dude,
Damn.
are you sure you don't do that? Like, man, wow.
Yeah, I wish I had your good looks and intelligence.
You've got neither.
Yeah, I've tried to reduce the glow. Cut that out if you don't mind.
Come on, make the segment. Let's go.
I know.